Human returns as the alpha male with his pack after all the aliens laughed at him. The outer edge of the Epsilon 9 system had always been quiet. Floating rocks, distant stars, and the occasional pulse of a mining outpost made it feel almost abandoned. But for Lieutenant Mara Vale, quiet meant danger. Every shadow could hide trouble, and every alert could signal a fight she did not want to have. Myra leaned back in the small cockpit of her shuttle, adjusting the straps of her uniform. The Epsilon border station was her destination, and she had a mission to complete. Her fingers tapped nervously on the console. She had heard stories of what the Cathari were capable of, the alien species with strange skin patterns, extra limbs, and minds sharper than any humans. Mara had always respected her enemies, but that did not make her feel safe. The Cathari and humans had fought many skirmishes along this frontier. Humans were often called reckless by the other species, too emotional, too impulsive, too fragile. Mara, a xenobiologist and officer, often had to remind herself that humans were clever, adaptable, and dangerous in ways the Cathari could not understand. She had seen it in action many times. As her shuttle docked, the station's cold metal corridors stretched ahead like a giant steel maze. The lights flickered as she stepped off the ramp, and the smell of antiseptic hit her nose. The triage bay was crowded. Humans, Cathari, and a few other alien species were in varying stages of recovery from border clashes. Medical personnel hurried past, carrying supplies and tending to patients. Mara's eyes scanned the room, looking for the one subject she had been assigned to. A young Cathari operative, captured after a minor skirmish at the outer asteroid belt. The Cathari lay in a narrow bed, their forearms folded carefully across their chest, eyes closed, chest rising and falling slowly. The other humans gave cautious glances, avoiding eye contact. Myra approached with calm, deliberate steps. "Salith," she said the name softly, almost like a warning. The Cathari's eyes snapped open. They were sharp, calculating, and full of distrust. Salith's skin shimmered faintly under the station lights, a living display of mood, emotion, and health in ways humans could barely understand. Their voice was melodic, yet cold. "You are human," Salith said, the words perfectly clear, though the accent was strange. "Why are you here? Another trick, another experiment?" Mara did not flinch. "No trick," she replied evenly. "I am here as part of the research team. We are studying your biology, your recovery systems, that is all." Salith's head tilted slightly. "Humans study us because you are weak. You are emotional, fragile, and unpredictable. I do not need study to see this." Mara kept her expression neutral. "Perhaps, but humans survive in ways the Cathari cannot, and that can be dangerous for anyone who underestimates us." The Cathari blinked, intrigued despite themselves. No one on the station would have expected a human to speak with such confidence. Mara had a calm intelligence, a quiet authority that even the aliens could not ignore. Before either of them could continue, a loud alarm echoed through the corridors. Red lights flashed as the station trembled. Mara instinctively grabbed her sidearm, but a medical officer waved her back. "Containment breach, triage systems failing. All personnel to emergency pods." Mara's heart beat faster. The station had been attacked by unknown forces, perhaps a rogue group of Cathari or an opportunistic pirate crew. She did not know. All she knew was that someone was in danger and she had little time to act. She turned back to Salith. The young Cathari was already sitting up, their limbs moving with practiced precision, ready to defend themselves. "We must move," Mara said, "or we both die." Salith's eyes narrowed. "I do not need your help." "You do not have a choice." Mara gestured to the only available emergency equipment nearby, a pair of adaptive healing pods meant to stabilize injured personnel. Both were damaged in the alarm. The system was malfunctioning, detecting compatibility only in ways that the human interface could override. Before Salith could protest further, the pod's doors slid open. The medical officer shouted, "Get inside, now!" Myra pushed herself into the pod first, her body pressing against the cold metal walls. Salith hesitated, glancing around with suspicion. "This is a trap," they hissed. "Do not touch me," the pod whirred to life. Lights flickered, panels glowed, and sensors scanned both their bodies simultaneously. A strange energy hummed around them. Myra felt a pull, almost magnetic, pulling her closer to the other occupant. Salith tensed, muscles rigid, and the pod's interface interpreted the tension as a bonding signal. The doors slid shut. sealed, locked. Inside the pod, the air felt strange, thick with energy. The walls pulsed slightly, almost like a heartbeat. Myra's first thought, the pod was alive. The second thought, we are trapped together. The pod began its healing protocol, but it did something unexpected. Sensors connected their nervous systems. Myra felt an odd sensation, something like electricity, but warmer, deeper. And then she felt Salith's fear, pure, intense alien fear. Salith screamed, though not audibly. The pod amplified the connection. Mara flinched as every sharp thought, every defensive reflex of the Cathari hit her mind. She staggered, trying to pull back, but could not. Their pain, their anxiety, their controlled fury, it was all inside her. You, Salith's voice was raw, unfiltered. This is wrong, stop this. I can't, Mara thought back. The pod responded to her brain, not her voice. She felt the Cathari's pulse, their quickened breathing, and the strange, rhythmic vibrations in their chest. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time was impossible to measure. The pod adjusted itself constantly, reacting to their shared state. Mara realized something astonishing. The pod was designed for synergy, not just healing. It required cooperation, and if they resisted, it amplified the pain. Gradually, Mara stopped resisting. She concentrated on her breathing, steadying herself. She sent calm thoughts, simple signals trying to reach Salith. I'm not your enemy here. The pod is trying to help us. Fight it and we both suffer. Work with me. Salith stiffened, resisting at first. Then, slowly, they mirrored her breathing. Their mind, sharp and disciplined, tried to analyze her approach. Mara realized that this was the first time Salith had experienced another perspective directly, unfiltered by words or culture. The pod hummed, lights shifting in response to the newfound synchronization. Pain began to fade, their muscles loosened. Their hearts, so different biologically, somehow found a rhythm. Why do you care? Salith finally thought. Because, Mara thought back, we survive together or we die separately. That is the human way. For the first time, Salith considered the idea. Humans, fragile, reckless, emotional, could endure in ways Cathari could not imagine. Mara's calm, unshakable presence, her refusal to panic under pain, was a revelation. The pod's lights shifted to a soothing blue. Their pain faded further. Mara felt a strange respect for the alien beside her. This Cathari, trained for combat and distrust, was now experiencing the human ability to adapt. Outside, alarms continued, but inside the pod, time slowed. Enemies no longer felt like enemies. They were two living beings forced into an impossible connection, learning from one another by necessity. And then the first stage of healing ended. The pod pulsed gently, signaling that recovery was complete, but the bond remained. Mara could still feel Salith's heartbeat in her mind, the alien rhythms unfamiliar yet comforting. Salith, in turn, sensed Mara's steadiness, her calculated emotional control. Neither spoke immediately. Words felt unnecessary, almost trivial. The pod had forced them to understand each other without language. Finally, Salith whispered, "Humans are different than I believed." Mara smiled faintly. "And Cathari can surprise even the humans." The pod's doors hissed open. They were free, but changed. Outside, the chaos of the station raged on, alarms, fire suppression, and shouts. But Mara and Salith stepped out together, not as enemies, but as something new. Allies in survival, whether they liked it or not. And that was only the beginning. The station still shuddered as Mara and Salith stepped out of the pod. Smoke curled from damaged conduits, and distant alarms blared through the corridors. But for the first time, Mara noticed something strange. Salith did not lunge to attack, nor did they retreat. They walked beside her, cautious but not hostile. Mara's mind was racing. The pod had bonded them in ways neither of them had expected. She could still feel Salith's heartbeat, fast, tight, nervous, but now slightly more steady. And she sensed something else. The alien's fear was tempered with curiosity. "Stay close," Mara said softly. "We need to get to the control hub. I can help stabilize the station." Salith's gaze flicked toward her, a mixture of suspicion and surprise. "You expect me to trust you?" "I don't expect trust," Mara admitted, "just cooperation." They moved cautiously through the damaged corridors. Sparks flew from exposed wiring, smoke stung their eyes, and the hum of the station's failing systems made the air heavy. Mara felt every surge of adrenaline in Salith's body, every twinge of tension, as if it were her own. It was disorienting at first, but she learned to separate what was hers and what was the alien's. "You feel everything I feel," Salith said after a few minutes, voice low. It is intrusive. I hate it. Mara nodded. I know, but the pod bonded us. We can't undo it, not yet. The only way out is to work together. Salith's limbs twitched with restrained anger. Humans are weak. Your emotional chaos would kill most Cathari. And yet we survive, Mara countered. Humans are strong in ways you cannot imagine. We endure, adapt, and keep moving forward even when everything is against us. Salith stared at her, disbelief evident in their expression. Endure? You call feeling everything at once, your own thoughts and mine, enduring? Yes, Mara said simply. We endure. And sometimes that endurance saves lives. Sometimes it saves more than just ourselves. They reached a junction where debris blocked the path to the control hub. The other corridor was open but led past a damaged reactor room. The heat was rising, and Mara knew that a single wrong step could trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. Which way? Salith asked, looking at the reactor. Mara placed a hand on the metal wall for support. She could feel Salith's tension radiating through the bond. Every calculation, every instinct, every fear was mirrored in her mind. The reactor is risky, she admitted, but the path through the debris could collapse. We take the reactor room, carefully. Salith's eyes narrowed. Carefully is not human. Humans always make mistakes. Mara smiled faintly. Maybe, but humans also adapt when mistakes happen. Watch. Step by step, they moved through the reactor room. Heat licked their skin, alarms blared, and loose panels clattered to the floor. Mara could feel Salith's panic spike with every step, and she consciously slowed her own breathing to calm the alien. Gradually, Salith began to mirror her movements, their body following hers with increasing precision. When they reached the other side, the bond had shifted. Salith's sharp, rigid discipline blended with Mara's calm adaptability. They were still cautious, still wary, but now moving in sync. The control hub was in chaos. Screens flickered, showing warnings of failing life support, electrical surges, and reactor instability. A small team of human engineers scrambled to contain the damage. Mara and Salith approached together. Lieutenant Vale, one engineer called, relief evident in their voice. The pod told us you survived, we thought. Don't think, Mara interrupted. Help me stabilize the station and keep clear of the Cathari. She glanced at Salith. I need their skills too, follow my lead. Salith hesitated but obeyed. Their forearms moved with precision, pressing buttons and rerouting power with efficiency that Mara could barely match. Together, they formed a strange, temporary alliance, human adaptability and alien efficiency working side by side. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time was hard to measure. The bond in the pod remained, subtle but persistent. Mara could feel Salith's focus sharpening, their mind analyzing problems from angles humans rarely considered. Salith, in turn, experienced Mara's thought patterns, how she considered risks, how she factored in emotion and instinct as part of her strategy. You think humans are clever, Salith admitted almost to themselves. I did not expect this. Mara glanced at the alien. Clever is not the right word. We survive, we adapt, we endure, and sometimes that endurance is stronger than any weapon. A loud explosion shook the station. Debris rained from the ceiling. Engineers screamed, but Mara and Salith reacted instantly. Mara felt the alien's reflexes, the precise calculated motions, and matched them with her own, diving toward cover and helping guide others to safety. When the dust settled, Mara realized something astonishing. Salith had begun trusting her guidance. Not fully, but enough to act without hesitation. For an alien who had been raised to see humans as fragile and reckless, this was a small victory. The station's systems gradually stabilized. Alarms remained, but the immediate crisis had passed. Mara and Salith sat together on the floor of the control hub, exhausted, sweat and soot covering their bodies. You helped me, Salith said quietly. Humans are not what I expected. You helped me too, Mara replied. You are disciplined, precise, and fearless. Most humans would have panicked. You didn't. That's why we survived. The bond between them pulsed faintly, a reminder that the pod had done more than heal. It had connected them, forcing understanding in ways words never could. Mara felt a twinge of pride, not for herself, but for humanity. Humans could endure, adapt, and teach even the most disciplined alien something new about survival. For Salith, the realization was unsettling. Their entire life had been shaped by rigid rules and controlled emotion. Humans were messy, unpredictable, and resilient. The bond with Mara had shown them that survival did not require the absence of emotion. It often required using it wisely. "You feel everything I feel," Salith said, voice almost trembling. "It is confusing." "Yes," Mara admitted. "It is confusing, but also enlightening. We can understand each other better this way, and maybe we can survive better this way too." Salith did not respond immediately. Their glowing skin patterns shifted subtly, indicating thought and emotion. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they relaxed. The rigid tension Mara had felt since the first encounter softened. "This is strange," Salith admitted finally, "but I do not hate you, not completely." Mara smiled faintly. "That's a start." Outside the control hub, the station continued to burn. Human and alien engineers worked together, stabilizing life support and rerouting energy. Mara and Salith rose, moving back into the chaos to help. Their bond remained, subtle but persistent, giving them an almost instinctive understanding of each other's movements and decisions. And though neither could say it aloud, both knew the truth. The pod had changed them. They were no longer simply enemies. They were partners forced into a connection that neither of them could ignore. Mara felt a flicker of hope. If humans could endure this and teach an alien to trust them in the process, then maybe humanity's reputation as reckless, emotional, and fragile was wrong. Maybe humans were stronger than anyone had ever believed. For Salith, the realization was both shocking and enlightening. The alien had been taught that humans were dangerous but weak. Now, in the heat of survival, they saw the truth. Humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of enduring in ways Cathari could not. And for both of them, the bond remained. A quiet reminder that even in a galaxy full of conflict, survival often depended on understanding, cooperation, and the strange, unpredictable strength of humanity. The station had quieted, but only just. Red emergency lights still blinked, and the faint hum of the damaged life support system reminded everyone that danger was far from over. Mara and Salith walked side by side down the corridors, their steps cautious but synchronized. The bond created by the healing pod still lingered, subtle but undeniable. Mara could feel Salith's heartbeat, the rhythm of the alien's limbs, and the sharp focus that guided their every move. Salith, in turn, felt Mara's calm adaptability, the way she processed information quickly, assessed risks, and stayed emotionally steady even under pressure. "You are persistent," Salith said quietly. Their voice had lost some of its coldness. "Humans do not give up easily." Mara shrugged. "We survive. It is what humans do best." The pod had done more than heal their bodies. It had connected their minds in ways that neither fully understood. Mara realized that the bond allowed her to anticipate Salith's moves, their thoughts, and even their fears. And Salith, despite themselves, began to rely on that connection to navigate the chaos. They arrived at the station's central energy core, where sparks leapt from exposed wires and a low growl of overheating machinery filled the chamber. Engineers were already at work, but they were cautious, unsure how to proceed with both humans and Cathari nearby. Mara took a deep breath. "We need to stabilize the core," she said, pointing to a cluster of exposed conduits. "If it overloads, the entire station could collapse." Salith's eyes narrowed. "This is dangerous. You are human. You do not fully understand the risks." "I understand enough," Mara replied, "and humans have a way of surviving that Cathari do not. Watch and learn." As they approached the core, Mara noticed the first signs of the pod's lingering effects. The system seemed to recognize her presence, her neural patterns, and her emotional control. Small sparks that should have caused panic in most humans were simply redirected or neutralized by her calm, precise movements. Salith noticed too. "The pod reacts differently to you than to me," they said. "Why?" Mara glanced at them. "Humans are adaptable. Our minds work in ways that the pod wasn't designed to handle. It expects a predictable response like yours, but humans, we adjust, we endure, we improvise. The pod cannot predict that." Salith's skin shimmered in surprise. "You are different. Stronger in ways I cannot calculate." Mara ignored the compliment, focusing on the task at hand. She adjusted the core's magnetic field regulators, rerouted the power through a series of temporary conduits, and stabilized the energy flow. Sparks still flew, but they no longer threatened to ignite a catastrophic overload. Salith watched, fascinated despite themselves. "You are unbelievable. Humans survive chaos as if it were a tool, not a threat." Mara smiled faintly. "That is the human way." We take what life gives us, even if it is pain or fear, and we turn it into strength. The engineers glanced at Mara in awe. Even Cathari engineers, who were trained to calculate every variable and predict every outcome, seemed impressed. Mara's calm adaptability, combined with the aliens' precision, had stabilized the core faster than anyone had expected. But the station was far from safe. A distant alarm signaled another breach, this time in the cargo hold. Mara felt Salith's tension spike through the bond. They were already moving instinctively toward the threat, their steps coordinated without words. As they entered the cargo hold, smoke and debris filled the air. Several rogue Cathari operatives, loyal to a radical faction, were attempting to seize control of the station's supplies. Mara could feel the aliens' readiness to fight, their strategic calculations and split-second decisions. "You want to attack?" Mara asked quietly. Salith shook their head. "No, we need to control, not destroy." Mara nodded. "Exactly. Let's use our minds, not just our strength." Together, they moved with precision. Mara's human adaptability complemented Salith's disciplined strategy. The rogue Cathari were strong, but they were predictable in their aggression. Mara anticipated their movements, using feints and misdirection, while Salith coordinated precise interventions, disabling weapons and locking doors. The rogue Cathari tried to overwhelm them, but the bond between Mara and Salith gave them an edge. They moved as one, almost instinctively, their minds linked in subtle ways. Each action Mara took was mirrored or supported by Salith, and vice versa. The combined effect was devastating. The rogues were subdued without a single life lost. When the chaos settled, Mara and Salith stood amidst the fallen equipment, breathing heavily. The station was quiet again, but both knew it was only temporary. "You are unlike any human I have known," Salith admitted. "Your strength is mental, not just physical. You endure chaos as if it were natural." Mara's eyes softened. "Humans have to. We are fragile in some ways, yes, but our minds make up for it. We adapt, improvise, and survive." Salith considered this. "It is astonishing. Perhaps the Cathari have underestimated your species." "You are finally seeing the truth," Mara said. "Humans are not just emotional chaos. We are adaptable. We endure. And sometimes that endurance is stronger than weapons or strategy." The pod's lingering effects pulsed gently, reinforcing the connection between them. Mara could sense that Salith's mind was changing, opening in ways she could not have predicted. The alien was beginning to understand the human approach to survival, not just in theory, but in experience. Outside the cargo hold, the station continued to stabilize. Engineers worked quickly, using the systems Mara and Salith had stabilized as a foundation. Communications were restored and life support levels began to return to normal. "You have taught me something today," Salith said quietly. "Something important." "And you have taught me too," Mara replied. "I've learned that even the most disciplined mind can change, can adapt, can survive when forced to connect with another. That is something humans do naturally." The bond between them remained, subtle but persistent. It was no longer just a byproduct of the healing pod. It had become a bridge between two species, two minds, and two approaches to survival. Myra realized that this bond, while accidental, could have lasting implications. If humans and Cathari could work together in this way, sharing strengths and compensating for weaknesses, the future of interspecies cooperation could change forever. For Salith, the realization was equally profound. The alien had been raised to see humans as reckless and weak. Now they saw a different truth. Humans were resilient, clever, and capable of enduring challenges that the Cathari could not predict. "You are remarkable," Salith said finally. "Not just as a human, but as a partner. I did not expect this." Mara smiled faintly. "Neither did I. But that is the human way. We endure, we adapt, we survive, and sometimes we do it together." As they left the cargo hold, moving back toward the control hub, Mara felt a quiet sense of pride. Humanity had once again proven itself, not through weapons or brute strength, but through intelligence, adaptability, and endurance. Salith walked beside her, their forearms relaxed for the first time since the pod. The alien's glowing skin patterns shifted subtly, indicating thought, emotion, and a dawning respect. Together, they returned to the control hub, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. The bond between them was no longer just a connection. It was a partnership, a proof that human ingenuity and resilience could change the course of events, even in the most dangerous situations. And as Mara glanced at Salith, she knew one thing with certainty. Humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology alone, but in the ability to adapt, endure, and thrive even when the odds seemed impossible. The Epsilon 9 border station hummed with cautious activity. Fires had been extinguished, alarms still blared in sporadic bursts, and the damaged corridors were crowded with humans and Cathari engineers working side by side. For the first time, Mara noticed the quiet tension in the eyes of the Cathari personnel. They had seen the bond between her and Salith in action, witnessed how humans could adapt to chaos and survive with minimal resources. The station commander, a grizzled human named Captain Renner, called an emergency briefing. Mara and Salith were summoned. The pair walked through the corridors, still feeling the subtle bond from the pod. They could sense each other's thoughts and emotions faintly, a quiet rhythm that had become both comforting and unnerving. Captain Renner gestured for them to sit. "We've stabilized the core and secured the station," he said, glancing at Mara. "But we have intelligence incoming. The Cathari command wants answers. They want to know exactly what happened here." Salith's eyes narrowed. "They will demand blame." "Humans always cause chaos in their presence." Mara shook her head. "Not this time. They've seen what humans can do. They'll see strength and adaptability in endurance, not just recklessness." The communications officer activated a holographic screen. Across it appeared a Cathari admiral, her skin glowing with authority and command. Her four limbs moved gracefully as she addressed the room. "Lieutenant Vale Salith," she said, voice crisp. "Reports indicate the station was under threat." Yet the humans and Cathari together stabilized it without casualties. "Explain." Salith stepped forward, speaking carefully. "The humans adapt. They endure. Their approach is not predictable, but it is effective. Lieutenant Vale coordinated responses that saved the station. She demonstrated human strength in ways we did not anticipate." The Admiral's glow shifted slightly, a sign of surprise among the Cathari. "You speak truthfully?" she asked, her eyes fixed on Salith. "Yes," Salith replied. "Humans survive chaos, they endure. And they can teach even Cathari operatives strategies we cannot calculate." Mara added, "It's not just strategy. Humans adapt emotionally, mentally, and physically to situations. We can respond to chaos in ways no algorithm can predict. That is why the station survived." A murmur spread through the room as Cathari officers and engineers processed this. Mara could feel the subtle disbelief, followed by the slow realization that humans were indeed more capable than they had been taught to believe. The Admiral remained silent for a long moment, then spoke. "This changes things. If what you say is true, humans are not merely reckless and emotional. They possess unique strengths that even Cathari systems cannot anticipate." Salith nodded, a faint glow pulsing along their limbs. "Yes, I have experienced it directly. Their endurance, adaptability, and intelligence are remarkable." The briefing ended, but the ripple effects began immediately. Word of the human Cathari cooperation at Epsilon 9 spread quickly through both fleets. Human engineers and soldiers were now being observed more closely. Cathari leaders began re-evaluating their assumptions about human capabilities. Meanwhile, Mara and Salith returned to the control hub. The bond from the pod remained, subtle but steady. It allowed them to anticipate each other's actions, work in perfect harmony, and make split-second decisions that saved lives. The station was not completely secure, however. Intelligence reports indicated rogue Cathari factions were still active, and other neighboring systems were reacting to the news of human resilience. Mara realized that their actions had consequences beyond the station. They had demonstrated humanity's potential to both allies and enemies. Salith spoke quietly as they moved through the corridors. "Humans, you change perceptions, not just here but everywhere. Other species will see you differently now." "Yes," Mara replied, "and that is the point. Humans have a reputation for recklessness, but we survive because of it. We endure because we must. And now others will see that our endurance can be an advantage, not a weakness." Back in the main operations center, Mara accessed the station's data network. The pod had transmitted logs of their neural synchronization and cooperation. The data was unprecedented. Cathari scientists would have to study it, and it would challenge long-held beliefs about human biology and psychology. Salith hovered nearby, watching Mara analyze the data. This proof of adaptability, humans will now be respected, they said. Maybe, Mara said cautiously. Or maybe they'll fear us even more, but that's not our concern right now. Right now, we survive and help others survive. That's enough. Days passed. Myra and Salith continued to work together, responding to emergencies, stabilizing systems, and guiding both human and Cathari personnel. The bond from the pod had evolved. It was no longer just a forced connection. It was a tool. They could communicate silently, anticipate threats, and act with precision that neither could achieve alone. Word of their cooperation reached higher levels of Cathari command. Salith was summoned to provide a full report, and Mara accompanied them. The Cathari leadership listened intently as Salith described the pod, the bonding process, and the human ability to adapt and endure under extreme conditions. This changes everything, the Admiral said again. If humans can integrate their unique strengths with Cathari efficiency, the galaxy may shift in ways we cannot predict. Salith nodded. It is true. Humans are not weak. They are strong in ways Cathari cannot calculate. I have experienced it firsthand. The announcement triggered a wave of new orders. Joint human-Cathari teams were formed to stabilize other border stations, using the lessons from Epsilon 9. Mara and Salith were assigned as instructors and advisors, their experience becoming a model for interspecies cooperation. Yet with recognition came tension. Not all Cathari agreed with the new perspective. Some saw humans as unpredictable threats. Myra felt the subtle hostility through the bond as they moved through crowded halls, but she ignored it. Humans had endured worse. Adaptation was their strength. One evening, as the station quieted, Mara and Salith stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing expanse of Epsilon 9. Stars stretched endlessly, a reminder of the vast galaxy that awaited them. You know, Salith said quietly, I did not expect to respect humans, and yet, I do. Your endurance, your cleverness, your ability to survive is remarkable. Mara smiled faintly. And I did not expect to find respect in a Cathari, but here we are. Maybe survival isn't about who is strongest. It's about who can adapt, endure, and work with others when necessary. Salith nodded slowly. Then perhaps humans are not the reckless creatures I believed them to be. Perhaps you are something more. Mara glanced at them. We are what we must be, and sometimes that is enough to change the galaxy. The bond pulsed faintly, a quiet reminder that their connection was more than physical. It was a bridge between species, a proof of what could happen when humans and Cathari worked together, and a symbol of humanity's unique power, adaptability, endurance, and resilience in the face of chaos. From that moment forward, the Epsilon 9 station became more than a recovery point. It became a symbol of human potential, a place where humans were seen not as fragile, reckless beings, but as adaptable, intelligent, and essential allies. And as Mara looked at Salith, she understood the truth. This was just the beginning. Humanity's influence, strength, and enduring spirit would ripple outward, changing not just perceptions, but the course of the galaxy itself.